A missing person investigation in Russia took a grisly turn when body parts began to surface.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the inaugural episode of We Saw the Devil, a podcast where we discuss lesser-known cases of true crime and the murderers who perpetrate them. This is Robin.
And this is Jackie.
And for our first episode, our maiden voyage, if you will, we will be discussing...
The Granny Ripper.
The Granny Ripper.
Tamara Samsonova.
So We Saw the Devil. We release episodes every Monday morning, and this particular episode will be posted to both All Horrors feed and its own. You can find it on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and all platforms on which you listen to your podcasts. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at We Saw the Devil. You can hit up our Instagram, We Saw the Devil Podcast, and then also our Facebook page, also by We Saw the Devil. If you want to learn more about the cases we discuss on the show or request a case for us to cover, you can visit our website, wesawthedevil.com.
Wesawthedevil.com. Wesawthedevil.com.
Yes, good job.
Woo!
Woo!
All right, so this is one of my favorite cases, actually, because I have a weird, I don't know, interest in cannibalism because it's so out there. Would you like to start?
I will start. Okay, so the Granny Ripper. It was on July 26, 2015, that the unforgiving sun reared its ugly head over the city of St. Petersburg, Russia. Amidst the grit and graffiti, life moved forward for most in the Frzynsky district. A local resident was walking his dog as it suddenly took a particular interest in a bush by the sidewalk. This led to the horrific discovery of a dismembered body. The remains were unidentifiable, limbless, and headless. A dismembered bag of horror for an everyday average person to find stuffed within a trash bag. Valentina Ulanova was missing for 3 days before her body was discovered. Impossible to identify, well, at least until a social worker showed up at her apartment for what would be a normal check-in. Suspicions were raised when 68-year-old Tamara Samsonova answered Ulanova's door and refused entry into the home. As a result, the social worker notified the police, who were dispatched to the home. 10 Dimitrov Street. Little did the police know that their knuckles rapping on the door would lead them into a schizophrenic's world of black magic and cannibalism. Malady of the mind could perhaps be to blame for what was discovered next, behind the soulless, black pea eyes and jagged dark smile of what would later be known as the Granny Ripper. On July 30th, the day after Tamara Samsonova confessed to 3 murders, CCTV footage emerged of her wearing a blue raincoat, taking several large plastic bags out of the building in the middle of the night. She leaves and returns 7 times. On the 7th time, instead of taking the trash bags, she leaves with a massive stock pot. Samsonova gave hours of grueling details, like how she and Valentina Ulanova met 4 months earlier. Samsonova moved in with Valentina under the premise that her apartment was being renovated, and once that was over, she would return home. It was unforeseen that Tamara would make Valentina's favorite potato salad with 50 crushed up phenazepam. Later that night, July 23rd, in her confession, Samsonova says, quote, "I woke up after 2 a.m. and she was lying on the floor, so I just started cutting her to pieces." She proceeded to first cut off her head and limbs with 2 knives and a hacksaw. She put her head and hands in a stock pot on the stove and boiled it, later admitting to doing so in an attempt to prevent identification. She then cut the body in half and removed the lungs and other internal organs. Those were never found, and the police now suspect, based on evidence from her previous crimes and also the diary entries, that she ate them. She then sheared down as much of the body as she could with kitchen scissors before packing the remains into trash bags. Police took her back to her flat and asked her to reenact the full killing on a dummy, which she was happy to do. She described how she couldn't get through the hip bones and how they were too heavy for her to carry far, so she dumped them in a neighbor's backyard. She disposed of 5 trash bags around the suburbs and then took the stock pot with the head and hands and dumped it nearby. Now, 12 years prior, in the exact same suburb, a man's eerily similar torso was found in the same street in which Ulanova's remains were found. Evidence found in Samsonova's flat, including a business card of the victim, links her to that crime. Whereas she didn't full-on confess to his murder, she also wrote about the man's tattoos in her journal. Samsonova was a woman of great pride over her abilities to speak Russian, English, and German. She wrote entries recounting at least 11 additional murders, as well as logged years' worth of her meaningless daily tasks and performance of black magic rituals. One particular entry from her journal read, "I killed my tenant Volodya, cut him into pieces in the bathroom with a knife, put the pieces of his body in plastic bags, and threw them away in the different parts of the Fruzinski district." It's no coincidence that Marina Krivenko, 53, who lived next door to Samsonova, said that she was obsessed with Soviet serial killer Andrei Chikatilo, who was convicted of cannibalizing and murdering 52 men, women, and children. Chikatilo claimed over 60 victims and was executed by a single gunshot to the back of the head in 1994. She claimed that Tamara had countless articles on his crimes and even many books about his murders. Now, what we know about Tamara Samsonova's life. Tamara was born on April 25th, 1947 in the city of Uzur in Russia. After high school, she moved to Moscow, where she worked for a travel agency called InTourist, and eventually married a man named Alexei Samsonova. In the year 2000, Alexei went missing. Tamara notified police of his disappearance, but their searches turned up nothing. In 2003, 3 years after Alexei was last seen, Tamara began to rent a room out of her flat on Dimitrov Street. Sound familiar? Her 44-year-old tenant also went missing. After 2003, she worked across the city as a caretaker for various elderly people in the St. Petersburg suburbs. As Russia's Life News managed to find out, Tamara Samsonova had changed jobs 8 times by the time she retired, having worked for no more than 2 or 3 years per job. Her seniority at the time of retirement was only 16 years, so therefore she just received a pension right below the poverty line, 7,087 rubles per month. Suffice it to say, Tamara Samsonova was broke. Now, in December of 2015, she was sent for compulsory psychiatric treatment in a specialized hospital in Kazan while she awaited for her trial. The Soviet-style institution was used by Joseph Stalin's vicious secret police, Chief Lavrentiy Beria, to shut away political prisoners during the Cold War. When asked by the judge if she should remain in prison or be released to a psychiatric hospital, Samsonova replied, quote, "I have nowhere else to live. I am a very old person, and I put the whole matter to rest deliberately. I have thought 77 times about it and then decided that I must be in prison. I will die there and the state will probably bury me. This is no way to live. With this last murder, I close the chapter. I am guilty and deserve punishment." In her brief appearances before the judge, Samsonova has been all smiles, smiling and blowing kisses to reporters from the defendant's tank. In March of 2017, a judge ruled that her mental illness absolved her of her responsibility for the death of Valentina Ulanova. Judge Pavel Smirnov ordered that she should spend the rest of her life in a mental institution after a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia. Because of this ruling, it's likely that the public will never know the extent of Samsonova's crimes. The investigation is still ongoing as of 2019, but Samsonova will never get any additional charges.
You know, it's really interesting when I actually heard about this is it made me think of one of the most memorable moments when it came to serial killers and responses of like the neighbors around them was the landlady for Jeffrey Dahmer who described the smell of him cooking food and what happened. She thought it was chitlins.
Yeah, chitlins, yeah.
Yeah, chitlins. And it was actually human. And I'm wondering how people in Russia actually cook when nobody was concerned with the smells.
But it's not. The interesting part about this case is that they still to this day have not completely confirmed that she was a cannibal. And, you know, as you and I have discussed, like there are limited resources for this story. You know, it boils down to Daily Mail, which is obviously not like a really good source, and then a bunch of Russian newspapers, and all of them have said that the internal organs were missing, and then apparently she details it in her journals, but for some reason the police, I'm assuming possibly for political reasons, haven't confirmed her being a cannibal.
I don't really, I'm wondering, here's another thing, is that when I was looking into her, there was a lot of black holes as far as, why does she know German?
Or, yeah.
Or English?
I mean, I'm assuming she did work for a travel agency.
Well, you did find some interesting information about her working at possibly working at a hotel, right?
Yeah, so she apparently worked at like the Soviet hotel that was notorious for the hotel workers being spies for other people, basically against the Soviet Union. So, like, they worked for the Soviet Union against spies. So she worked there. So it's possible that the Granny Ripper was kind of,
Do you think that maybe the government's behind some of this?
I doubt it.
Dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Well, I mean, like, not, conspiracy theory aside, what if she was a spy? What if there's a reason why there's a black hole? You don't hear anything about who she's related to.
Mm-mm.
Any actual associates? I mean, she literally had a husband, and nobody else has come forward.
Well, okay, so in her journals, it's they pretty much confirmed that she murdered her husband. Like that's pretty much an accepted fact at this point. She also apparently murdered his mother, so her mother-in-law. But what is so fascinating about this is that her journal entries, she details a lot of murders. I think it's like up to 11 murders that are like direct and to the point. And because they can't find any bodies, they can't charge her with anything.
Well, how long was she even married to him? How long were they together? And
There's no documents, like as far as the news and whatnot, and with the information in the articles, it doesn't say how long they were married, anything. It just says that they were married and then he went missing.
well, it's kind of weird because, like, if you've been married to somebody, I would imagine she's older, so like remarrying's kind of harder, especially, and they have no kids.
He went missing in the year 2000. Now, she was born in 1947 and he went missing in the year 2000. So, I mean, I'm assuming they were probably married for a while.
Yeah, well, you can't assume everything, I guess. They don't say if she's had previous marriages or anything else either. And then it's weird because it seems like she's had this very lonesome life.
Mm-hmm.
Other than these people she invited to her apartment and ate. Like, I mean, it's like, hey, wanna, like, she was the caretaker for these people, you know? For some of them, for some of the elderly, she, like, moved on to doing that.
It's just really weird. I find it so fascinating just because not only if you go to our website, wesawthedevil.com, and you can take a look at her, but if you do go down the rabbit hole, she's very fascinating as far as her mannerisms and how she physically kind of conducts herself. But I want to know how she learned German and English. I'm assuming, I mean, that could possibly point to government too.
Yeah, and what's weird is that she had roommates, right? And they went missing, and nobody ever like had a red flag.
Yeah, her husband went missing.
All these people around her started dropping like flies, and over a long period.
Yeah,
and they kept discovering nearby corpses, and they had they had no missing reports for some of these people, and they had missing reports for some of these people. There's no clarity behind, like, the disappearances and anything like that. There's no clarity on anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, that's what makes me wonder, what if she was connected to the Russian government and they just kept covering it up for her?
The Soviets, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's like, well, she's a fuck up. Or she knew people to clean up after her.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. And I find the timing so Valentina Ulanova, she murdered her, and then it took 3 days for someone to come across her remains. I feel really bad for this particular suburb of St. Petersburg because apparently in one of, I believe it was Russia Today or Russia News, they actually say that this one particular neighborhood has had remains found multiple times, and not even just from her.
Oh, yeah, well, like, it's not exactly a really great looking neighborhood. I mean, I'm sorry, for people who are from Russia or, like, love Russia and stuff. Sometimes it can be a little bit hard to tell the better parts of Russia, okay? That doesn't look like a great part of Russia. There's graffiti everywhere. It's run down. It looks like rubble.
Yeah, it's a very poor neighborhood that she operated in, that's for sure, which I think enabled her to dump the body. But I mean, ultimately, it was a fluke of the way that she was found, is that the social worker, Valentina had a social worker that came to check on her, and
it would be nice if we had more information about Valentina too, but we don't. but I don't really need that information about her as a victim. But what's weird is that, like, it's obvious that there was a go-between, like a third party that connected these people. At the same time, it's odd that nobody else noticed anything else. Like, there's no information about the other victims and how their families reacted and how they were never discovered and how they just kind of were like, okay, well, can't be that old lady, the number one suspect.
Yeah, I just find that the lack of this case garnered so much worldwide interest when it first hit. I recall it being on Yahoo News, Huffington Post, Facebook friends shared it when it came out, Twitter, and then all of a sudden it just died. And you would think on a case that large in scale that there would be some sort of just, people coming out of the woodwork. Oh, I worked with her here. I knew her here. I used to see her all the time. And it seems like there are 2 neighbors. That's it.
Yeah, mother-in-law, right?
The mother-in-law was dead. She murdered her.
Oh,
allegedly.
I'm sorry. I must have mistranslated. Anyway, like, what's really weird about all of this? Is that she could still be petty, even though she's being arrested, and talk about how her roommate was fat after she killed her. She's like, she was too fat to move. And I'm like, damn, that is like the shittiest thing that an old foreign grandmother could say to somebody. Because I can't tell you, like, I've been around in my life, and all my friends who had grandmothers who were like first generation from another country would always call them fat and stuff. And I'm like, what the fuck? And this lady, she planned her fucking retirement.
She did. She even admitted it. She even admitted, I planned this in advance. This is my final murder. The state's gonna bury me.
Do you think I think she let it happen on purpose. She must have had a plan. I swear to God, she knew somebody who was covering the shit up for her or something before, and she just let this go.
What I don't understand, and everyone should check out the CCTV footage. It's freely available on YouTube, or if you even just Google her, it's freely available. But in the CCTV footage, as I discussed, you can see her going down. No, she lives on the 2nd floor. So she made 7 trips in one night, carrying trash bags with dismembered remains of this 78-year-old housemate of hers, who she called fat. and then the last trip, so 6 trips with the body parts, and then the last trip with the head in a stock pot.
It's really hard not to believe that she wouldn't be a cannibal. I haven't heard of any serial killer who has a history of killing multiple people up to the body count of a serial killer who cooks them actively. Most serial killers don't even try to boil somebody out to get rid of their identity.
Yeah, I don't even know of a case where someone did that, really.
Without cannibalism being involved.
Yeah, well, she wrote about cannibalizing them and eating them for her black magic rituals. Apparently she was obsessed with black magic and detailed, like the internal organs and cooking them.
What was she doing? What if she was actually really successful with this black magic? We may never know.
We may never know.
Yeah, what else do you think she did? It couldn't be just humans. I mean, like, what do you think she did? Animals and shit too?
I don't know.
Oh, that's sad.
Life is hard in Russia.
Oh my God. Like, no, I think so. I'm going to assume that she was probably just really hungry.
Probably. I mean, she didn't really have a good, like...
Maybe she didn't have an ID.
Maybe.
She couldn't get her groceries.
What I find so fascinating, so apparently their entire argument, Valentina and Tamara's argument, happened over a dirty cup. So apparently Tamara was a really shitty housemate, and so she and Valentina one night got into an argument over a dirty cup that Tamara had left in the sink, and Valentina was done. She said, I'm finished, you need to go home, your apartment's been renovated, out of my fucking house. And that night is the night that Tamara decided, I'm gonna kill her tomorrow.
Well, you can see photos of the apartment. It's fucking filthy. It looks like a step away from hoarders.
Yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. And that's what was shocking too. But so Tamara decides to kill Valentina. The very next day, she drives 3 hours away. So she had a car.
Okay.
She drives 3 hours away to a pharmacy and gets a pharmacist to give her basically like a fucking horse tranquilizer. 50 pills of this phenazepam.
Yeah, wasn't that because was she previously diagnosed with schizophrenia?
No, she convinced a doctor that her one of her friends or someone that she knew needed it.
How can you convince them without any leverage?
Well, I guess it's Russia and then rural Russia, I guess. But she convinced the pharmacist to give her 50 pills of like an
Um,
insanely strong.
maybe like it's about. I don't know enough about Russia, and I can't really make commentary and be like, oh, their life is so hard that maybe a lot of them actually make bargains with their chemist.
It's true. Who knows? But she got 50 pills and then stopped and got an Olivier salad, which was Valentina's favorite meal, apparently. It's kind of like a potato salad, like American equivalent of potato salad, and she crushed all 50 pills and put it into the salad.
That's
Wouldn't you taste that? 50 pills, 50.
I don't know. I wonder if it's bitter. I mean, you'd have to look it up. I know aspirin and stuff is bitter, and a lot of like most medications kind of
Yeah, I
bitter.
would
You
assume
know,
so.
it tastes like Dunkin' Donuts, like homegrown coffee. That aftertaste of bitter, like lingering sharpness. I don't know.
But yeah, it's all crazy. I mean, apparently she drugged Valentina and then just went to sleep. And then just waited and woke up at 2 a.m. and was like, cool, she's gone.
But was she dead at that point, or just like in a coma?
The police and all of the news records say that she was unconscious. So Samsonova started cutting her apart as she was still alive, but just unconscious.
Oh, that fucking sucks, though.
Hmm.
I mean, that's a better way to die than being hacked alive, like some other serial killers, like the toolbox murders and stuff like that. That's fucking terrible.
Yeah, it's just really sad. Her lack of remorse as a whole, but the CCTV footage is just so beyond creepy. And for 68 years old, she goes up and down the stairs 6 times holding full trash bags of body parts, and then also goes outside and drops them in places.
She's one fit Russian lady.
She is really, really fit for her age.
Yeah, like, I don't know, my mom couldn't do that. And my mom's younger than her.
Yeah, I mean, she got it done apparently, but there's a really great, I believe it's, if you go to YouTube and look it up, it's, I believe, Russian News, Russia Life.
RT?
Go to our website, We Saw the Devil, and you'll see a list of the resources that we pulled for our sources for this, but there's actually a really great interview. It's Russian television, and they take you to the apartment. They take you to the spot where the body was found. But yeah, their apartment was filthy.
Yeah, it was pretty gross. I'm not gonna lie, I expect roaches. Mice, probably.
Rats.
I think the rats in Russia probably make pizza. They make the pizza. You know, I wouldn't typically like ask this of a viewer or listener. I kind of want someone to sleuth a little bit on it. I want to know what information people can find because we've looked everywhere, and I have questions. I have a lot of questions about this. It's kind of weird.
No, it's super weird, and I'm fascinated by true crime as a whole. It's kind of like my passionate hobby. But the Granny Ripper, first of all, the name is amazing.
Yeah.
Good job on her killer name, but she's so frightening. She's just so unassuming, but yet horrifying.
Like how she carries herself is like, cause she could be a sweet old lady, but then you see her face and you're like, just kidding. Like, no, I'm good. So Hansel and Gretel go the other way. Like,
She's literally a 68-year-old woman that if you came across her at night in a dark alley, you would fucking run.
no, you would assume she looks like a witch. She looks like
Yeah.
a witch of dark magic. Like, she looks like the witch in the woods in Russia.
Yeah, she really does.
You know, I actually didn't really identify with her face with that until like this very moment.
And what else do they call her? Baba Yaga?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what Baba Yaga is? Like,
Basically, so in Slavic folklore, Baba Yaga is a supernatural being who appears as a deformed or ferocious-looking old woman.
oh my God.
In Russian fairy tales, she flies around in a mortar, wields a pestle, and dwells deep in the forest in a hut, described as standing on chicken legs.
What if she is her? Like, I'm not kidding you. Maybe there is some shit that is based on folklore that is actually based on a person. What if it's actually based on, like, you can't convince me that that shit ain't right.
There's something definitely going on there. But what I feel really bad about is the fact that in her journals alone, so currently police last estimated, right, before her sentence came down, life in a psychiatric ward. Police said that the investigation had already turned up at least 14 additional victims.
Wow.
Like total victims, right? So she admitted to 3, recanted that, And then the police read the journals, investigations ongoing. Based on her MO, she got up to about a 14-person at least victim count. And then because the judge said, well, she's severe paranoid schizophrenic, life in, prison, and we will never know. We will never know the extent of her crimes, period.
I wonder if there are any listeners out there who are psychologists who would like to analyze her from the perspective of her having paranoid schizophrenia too. I think that'd be really fucking interesting. And I wonder if they published any of her journals anywhere.
There are miscellaneous pages that have been published. One-off, one page here, one page there, but no, nothing just as a whole. The police still have that.
I think it's really cool though, in a way that we get to actually hear about it here in the United States, because I actually would have never expected to hear about a case like this from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like we keep our media so separate.
Yeah.
And, we're pretty separated from most of the world as the United States. Our news is not the same whatsoever from Australia, from Europe, whatever. And we miss out on a lot of stuff from around the world. Even BBC doesn't cover a lot of shit.
That's true.
So to me, to be able to, it was really fascinating because you don't hear about cannibals very often. I mean, everyone's heard of Armin Muse and Jeffrey Dahmer and stuff, but this is different. This is different because it's not often do you find a serial killer who's a woman. This is probably the first time I've ever heard of a female cannibal, potentially.
No, it's true.
Which is extremely rare, and she's into black magic. Is she actually paranoid schizophrenic? I don't know. I don't know anything about the mental health care system and how they identify her as that.
Mm-hmm.
She could have been playing it up even.
I just looked up female cannibals, and there's actually on here, surprisingly enough, there is a Russian couple where both the woman and the boyfriend
I remember
cannibals.
them. I remember
This
reading
was a
about
couple
them.
years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
And they were military. He was military.
Mm-hmm.
And so they lived on military bases, and they just literally kidnapped people and brought them in and cooked them. And their house, their apartment on a military base looked like Ed Gein's house.
We should probably do an entire episode about that.
That was really interesting. But yeah, so apparently very, 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 very few.
Yeah, that's going to be the next. We should talk about that potentially.
But yeah, I don't know.
Tune in next time.
Yeah, tune in next time for that.
More cannibals.
But yeah, it's fascinating. It's just, trust me when I say that when you see her, the fascination all makes sense.
Yeah, you don't want that blowing kisses at you, I'm not gonna lie.
I laugh every time I see it, though.
You're a terrible person.
I'm a terrible human being, but I laugh every time I see her blowing kisses. It's just kind of what a psychotic piece of shit she is. And then all of a sudden she's sitting in the defendant's box and that
calling her fat and blowing kisses.
Yeah, calling her victims fat. Yeah. Sitting on her throne. Oh god, it's terrible. But my heart goes out to the victims, and then also a lot of people suspect that, especially in law enforcement in Russia, close to the case, that she has way more victims.
I believe it.
So, that's just really sad when people don't get closure in that.
Yeah, I agree. It's really hard when a family member goes missing and people don't know what happened to them.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I've met some people who've literally had family members go missing because of mafia in Michigan and stuff. In connection to a really big mobster, by the way. They just never forget that person. They never stop thinking about them. It's hard for people to let go of somebody who's missing because they don't have that closure, That's terrible.
It's true. So that's it for this week. And thank you for tuning in to our inaugural episode. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at We Saw the Devil and our website, www.wesawthedevil.com.
Tune in next time for more true crime and potential more cannibals.